Unit 4, Lesson 1. In this lesson, you will learn how to identify different types of visual perceptual skills and auditory perceptual skills, explain why they are important, and help children to develop them. As a teacher of young children, you've probably heard of these perceptual skills, which are all very important for learning literacy. Visual and auditory perception. Human beings have sensory organs which are able to respond to certain sensory stimuli. You are familiar with the 5 senses of vision, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. The sense of touch is linked to the body's ability to sense pain, temperature, movement, and balance. Specific parts of the brain are involved in dealing with these. The information that the brain receives through sensory organs is interpreted by what we call perception. To make meaning of this information, the brain uses previous knowledge. It organizes and interprets this knowledge. The integrated way that the senses and the muscles of the body work together is called sensory motor development. Perceptual development is influenced by nature and nurture, by inherited characteristics as well as by learning in a social context. Perceptual development forms the basis for all learning. As perceptual skills develop, the following happens. The auditory and visual sensory systems become more advanced. The brain becomes increasingly able to integrate and connect information it gets from these different senses. The child becomes increasingly able to discriminate or tell the difference between sensory inputs. As a foundation phase teacher, knowledge of visual and auditory perceptual skills is very important, especially for learning literacy. In this lesson, we are going to address the following visual perceptual skills: visual discrimination, visual memory, visual sequential memory, visual comprehension, shape recognition, foreground and background perception, visual motor coordination, and finally, depth perception. Let's take a more detailed look at the differences within these terms. We will also look at activities that will develop these skills. Visual discrimination is when one uses one's eyes to see similarities or differences, which is needed for comprehension, classification, and differentiation. An activity to develop visual discrimination would be to build 2 different towers out of blocks. In pairs, children work out the difference between the towers and modify them so that they are the same. Visual memory is remembering what one sees. To develop this skill, the children work in pairs. Place 10 items on a table. One child looks at the items for 10 seconds and then closes her eyes. While her eyes are closed, her partner removes an item. She then opens her eyes and has to identify the missing item. Visual sequential memory is remembering patterns one sees. Here, a teacher can make a sequence of 10 colored beads. The children look at these beads for 10 seconds and then try to copy the sequence. Visual comprehension is forming concepts with what the eyes see, which is needed for problem solving, abstract thinking, and drawing conclusions. For children in grade 3, you can ask the class to proofread a sentence that has some errors in it. They have to find and correct the mistakes in letter formation, punctuation, and spelling. Shape recognition is the ability to discern the shape of something one sees. For example, whether it is round or square or a straight line, and so on. Foreground background perception is being able to find pictures hidden in bigger pictures and knowing which visual details to hold onto and which to ignore. For example, learning to focus on the letters being read and not all the letters on the page. An activity to develop this skill is playing I spy with my little eyes something that is yellow. Visual motor coordination is the ability to control hand movement guided by vision. Depth perception is being able to see the world in 3 dimensions, or 3D, and being able to judge the distance of an object. You will find this list of skills in your reading section. In this lesson, we are also going to address the following auditory perceptual skills: auditory discrimination, auditory memory, auditory foreground and background, auditory comprehension. Auditory discrimination is the ability to discern one sound from another. A fun activity would be to have the children sit very quietly and identify all the different sounds they can hear. Auditory memory is being able to remember sounds. Here you can give an instruction to a group of children such as touch your nose or pat your tummy, and the children have to do the action. Auditory foreground and background discrimination is knowing which sounds to ignore and which to pay attention to. An exciting activity would be to get a small group of children to stamp their feet together. When you or another child blows a whistle, they all stop. Auditory comprehension is being able to make sense of what one hears. You could say something like, anyone wearing black shoes can sit. Or, if you have a baby sister, walk to me. The children have to follow the instructions. Teachers and other caregivers can really do a lot to stimulate the development of these perceptual skills in children. Always be on the lookout for playful ideas, and as a teacher, share these ideas with your learners' parents.